New government plan means COVID jabs will no longer be free for all residents. Retail sales shot up in February thanks to more tourists. Donald Trump becomes first former U.S. president to face criminal charges. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Starting April the 20th, residents who have received 3 COVID shots will have to pay for a booster dose. That, however, does not apply to priority groups such as medical workers, pregnant women and people aged 50 or above.
Having reviewed the latest suggestions from government health experts, the authorities today announced major changes to the city's vaccination arrangements. First, people aged 50 or above, adults who have chronic illnesses, 6-month-olds or those with weak immunity, pregnant women and healthcare workers will be classified as priority groups. Regardless of how many shots they have had in the past, they can get an extra dose for free as long as it's been over 6 months since their last vaccination or infection. Those aged 6 months or above who have not been infected with COVID will still be able to receive the 3rd dose for free. Currently, nearly 84% of the population, that's about 5.8 million people, are triple jabbed. Over 117,000 people have received more than 4 COVID shots. Starting April 20th, if these people do not belong to high-risk groups, they will have to pay for a booster. This woman, who's received 4 shots, said she wouldn't pay to have another shot, calling herself fully vaxxed. This woman said, "I'm triple jabbed and I don't need another shot. I've been infected before and we don't even wear masks now." Dr. Samuel Kwok, Chief Medical Executive of Virtus Medical Center, said the only paid option available to his knowledge is Comirnaty bivalent vaccines. Meanwhile, authorities say the demand for outreach vaccination services has declined and registration will stop from April 15th. The Civil Service Bureau will pass the operation of the COVID vaccine program to the Health Bureau and the Department of Health from tomorrow onwards.
Retail sales in the city were surprisingly strong last month. The value of total retail sales in February increased by 31.3% compared with the same month last year, provisionally estimated at $33.1 billion. Sales of jewelry, watches and valuable gifts recorded a remarkable 62% jump. Sales in optical shops, Chinese herbs and clothes categories also rose by more than 50%. The value of sales of commodities in supermarkets, meanwhile, fell by 13.5%. The government said the surge was due to the continued improvement in consumer sentiment and the sharp rebound in visitor arrivals. Looking ahead, the retail sector is expected to continue to benefit from the recovery of private consumption and inbound tourism. John Lee's wrapped up his 3-day trip to the BOA Forum. The chief executive says he achieved 4 goals. Lee said a highlight was the speech by Premier Li Qiang, which stressed the need for peace and stability, growth and working together for development. The chief executive said Hong Kong must fully integrate into the overall development of the country. Lee was pleased to have met various leaders, including BOA Forum chairman Ban Ki-moon. He added the city has participated in the Global Free Trade Zone Partnership Initiative, which provides more business opportunities. In order to prevent corruption in the banking sector, the Independent Commission Against Corruption is offering a new training course to senior banking staff. Mimosa Ngai reports.
The ICAC had earlier announced it will establish an international anti-corruption academy in the city in order to provide anti-bribery training for different local and overseas industries. The first such training course started on Wednesday. The 2-day professional anti-corruption training in banking management involved senior staff from 32 local, physical and virtual banks. The course has a total of 11 modules, including contents on forensic accounting and corruption risk management system. Some modules include speakers from governmental bodies, such as the Executive Director of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. Several of the ICAC's main departments were involved in teaching the course. While Operations Department taught the banking staff common corruption practices, Crime Prevention and Community Relations Departments lectured them on anti-graft practices and bank industry integrity. Director of Corruption Prevention Joe Lee explains why the banking sector was the first to receive the ICAC training.
Finance industry is an important pillar of Hong Kong's economy, and then the banks play a very important role in this financial sector. And also, banks handles and manages huge sums of people's assets, so it affects everybody. This banking sector and also the regulator, they give very high importance to the area of important internal control.
Ronald Chen, the LegCo member for the finance sector, said the ICAC training course is well designed.
Every year, every banking employee needs to attend some what we call refreshment course, but those courses are rather standard in nature and just inform them some basic principle. Without some practical cases, then they don't have in-depth knowledge about what happened in the current situation. So I think this time ICAC provide what I will put it as a 360 courses, and to tell the banking employees from the investigators' perspective.
The Corruption Prevention Department will distribute this blueprint to banking staff with some case studies included to educate them on the conception of anti-corruption. Mimosa Nai, TVB News.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump becomes the first former president to face criminal charges. He was indicted by a Manhattan grand jury after years of investigations into his personal, political and business dealings. The exact nature of the charges was still unclear Friday because the indictment remains under seal, but they stem from payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign to silence claims of an extramarital sexual encounter. Tracy Furness reports.
Donald Trump was at his Florida residence Mar-a-Lago Thursday when the grand jury indicted him over hush money paid to porn actress Stormy Daniels during his 2016 election campaign. Trump, who is on a bid to retake the White House, said he was completely innocent and indicated he would not drop out of the race. He soon took to social media, calling his accusers thugs and radical left monsters. He accused Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, seen here leaving his Manhattan office, of trying to hurt his chances of winning re-election. Bragg's office said it had contacted Trump's attorney to coordinate a surrender, which a court official said would likely occur next Tuesday. This is the first time a former president has been charged with a crime and could lead to more charges.
We're witnessing American history. This is the first time a former president has been charged with a crime. So this is unprecedented. And the question is, are there other prosecutors throughout the country who are going to follow suit and charge Donald Trump with more serious crimes? It's too early to speculate what type of sentence Trump would get if he were convicted by a New York jury. The judge would likely base it on the evidence that was presented at trial, whether Trump testified and whether he perjured himself.
Meanwhile, outside a New York court Thursday, supporters of the indictment were out in force.
I am feeling somewhat relieved. I think that I'm hoping that this is the beginning of something that will really bring down a very, very bad person who feels that he's invincible. And hopefully he isn't.
Supporters of the former president gathered outside his Palm Beach Mar-a-Lago property on Thursday to show their support. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
An American journalist is behind bars in Moscow after being charged with spying. Evan Gershkovich works for the Wall Street Journal and has appeared in court after being arrested in central Russia. He's been detained by security services. David Garrett reports.
Ivan Gershkovich was a well-known journalist in Russian media circles. Now the Wall Street Journal reporter is facing espionage charges. These long-lens photographs show the 31-year-old being led away from a Moscow court. Gershkovich is the first American reporter to be arrested for spying since 1986 and the end of the Cold War. The Wall Street Journal reporter had been detained by the Russian Security Service, or FSB, in Yekaterinburg, over 1,500 kilometres away, but was quickly transported to Moscow. The Wall Street Journal denies the allegations from the Russian security agency. Gershkovich's lawyer, Daniil Berman, spoke outside the court but didn't have details. The lawyer told media the premises were cleared of journalists and lawyers. They had a quick hearing. I don't know how long, he said. The Kremlin has tried to distance itself from the charges, saying it is a legal matter, but a spokesperson said he was caught red-handed. Maria Zakharova, a Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, claimed his activities did not correspond to the declared status of journalist. The White House condemned the arrest.
These espionage charges are ridiculous. The targeting of American citizens by Russian government is unacceptable. We condemn the detention of Mr. Gershkovich in the strongest terms. We don't have any specific indication that journalists would be targeted.
In Paris, press freedom group Reporters Without Borders voiced their concerns, saying Russia could be trying to orchestrate a prisoner swap.
At this stage, nothing indicates that this journalist was working beyond his work as a journalist. He was investigating on Wagner's recruitment in Yekaterinburg and on Russians' attitude towards the war.
Gershkovich previously worked for the New York Times, speaks Russian and went to college in Maine. A recent article written by him focused on Russia's economy slowdown amid Western sanctions. David Garrett, TVB News.
Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi will visit China this weekend for talks with Foreign Minister Qin Gang. Hayashi will be Japan's first top diplomat to visit China in more than 3 years amid growing friction between the two countries. Hayashi said he hopes to engage in a candid and in-depth exchange of views towards establishing a constructive and stable relationship. Still ahead on tonight's news. International Court of Justice ruled against the U.S. over Iran's assets. Welcome back to TVB News. In a partial victory for Iran, judges at the International Court of Justice ruled Washington had illegally allowed courts to freeze assets of some Iranian companies. The ICJ then ordered the United States to pay compensation, but left the amount to be determined later. However, in a blow for Tehran, the court said it did not have jurisdiction over the $1.75 billion in frozen assets from Iran's central bank. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The case before the International Court of Justice in The Hague in the Netherlands was initially brought by Iran against the US in 2016. Tehran said Washington allegedly breached a 1955 friendship treaty by allowing US courts to freeze assets of Iranian companies. The money was to be given in compensation to victims of terrorist attacks. The Islamic Republic denies supporting international terrorism. The 1950s Friendship Treaty was signed long before Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution, which toppled the US-backed Shah, and the subsequent severing of US-Iranian relations. Washington finally withdrew from the treaty in 2018. Nonetheless, the ICJ ruled that it was in place at the time of the freezing of the assets of Iranian commercial companies and entities. Presiding Judge Kirill Gevorgian said Iran was entitled to compensation.
By 14 votes to one, decides that the failing agreement between the parties on this question of compensation due to the Islamic Republic of Iran within 24 months from the date of the present judgment, this matter will, at the request of either party, be settled by the court and reserves for this purpose the subsequent procedure in the case.
The judges also explained that the court had no jurisdiction over the $1.75 billion in assets from Iran's central bank held by the US because that bank was not a commercial enterprise and thus not protected by the treaty. The rulings of the ICJ, the United Nations top court, are binding, but it has no means of enforcement. The United States and Iran are among a handful of countries to have disregarded its decisions in the past. The ruling comes amid heightened US-Iran tensions in the wake of tit-for-tat strikes between Tehran-backed forces and American personnel in Syria last week. Daniel Rell, TVB News.
Britain's King Charles has been getting his hands dirty as he continued his state visit in Germany. The British monarch got experience of cheese production at a eco-village near Berlin. Charles has made no secret of his passion for environmental issues. He was given a tour of this eco-friendly cheese-making facility, which is not far from Berlin and is part of a green village. The king tried his hand at mixing the ingredients along with the mayor and German president. Meanwhile, Camilla, the Queen Consort, went to the opera. She met performers and was shown around by the German president's wife. And then she watched some performers on the stage. Back locally, the Hong Kong Rugby Sevens tournament has kicked off today and will last for a total of 3 days. It is the first international sporting event held in the city since all COVID restrictions have been dropped. Our reporter Timothy Lee spoke with some revelers to find out more about their experience at the Hong Kong Stadium this afternoon.
Vikings, shiny suits, and even hot dogs. People dressed up in all shapes and sizes have made their way to the Hong Kong Stadium as the Hong Kong Rugby Sevens return to the city for a spectacular comeback. Besides residents, many tourists coming from a wide range of countries, including Germany, France, and Ireland, noted how much they looked forward to the event.
It's come back in full force. I think everybody's here to have a good time. It's amazing that the restrictions have been lifted finally, and it just feels like Hong Kong's back in full force.
Everyone's so friendly people. It's a good atmosphere. It makes you feel welcome.
This group of friends who live in Beijing said they have waited for 3 years just to enjoy a special moment together here today.
It's the first Sevens event. It's the first time we've been able to go abroad together as boys. We love Hong Kong! We love Hong Kong! We love Hong Kong!
Visitors today simply had to get their e-tickets scanned by the stadium personnel. With the Sevens being the first international sporting event held in the SAR since the lifting of all pandemic restrictions, those who came today were able to enjoy eating and drinking inside the arena without limitations. The 3-day competition will remain open to visitors until the 2nd of April.
Despite the poor weather, huge numbers of residents and tourists have flocked to the Hong Kong Stadium to enjoy the cheerful atmosphere of the Sevens. Several tourists that we spoke to said they would come back in the next several days to enjoy the games. Timothy Lee, TV News.
The government said the decline in student population in the city is a structural condition and will try to adjust the supply of school places in the long run. According to the Education Bureau's latest estimate, only 50,000 people will reach the age threshold to be admitted into Primary 1 by 2029. During a LegCo meeting today, Education Bureau Chief Christine Choi said the phenomenon is structural, not transitional. She also options might be suspending or combining certain schools, but some lawmakers think that will impact teaching staff morale and the quality of education. That's the news. Thanks for watching.